welcome back to another episode. I hope you guys are having an awesome week. This episode is going to be a good one. You want to know why? Well, okay, one, the small talk news stories are actually patient approved. I shared these two news stories with my patient this today, and they love the stories. And also the topic of this week is actually listener submitted. So one of you guys asked me to speak on this topic this week. And let me tell you, I feel like I can speak on this topic because this topic is all about self-confidence, actually lack thereof. So basically, the episode for today is all about how to overcome your nerves when you're tackling stressful new experiences. So if you're doing big cases that you haven't done before, if you're working on big projects that you haven't done before, can I just say also these are all feelings that I feel like we're not allowed to admit as healthcare providers, and maybe that's part of why it's so unhealthy. It's so normal to feel like nervous, or it's so normal to feel like maybe not even like you're going to be bad at something, but just feeling that kind of unsure newness that can sometimes present as feeling uncomfortable. It's normal to feel that way. But because of our industry, because we're taking care of people and we don't want to like project those feelings, we don't want our patients, they're already feeling anxious enough, right? You don't want to give them more to feel anxious about. Because of that, oftentimes we have to kind of swallow that feeling. So today, I want this to kind of be first and foremost like a safe space for you to feel that way. And just know you're totally not alone. Like it is normal. We're just not all talking about it because it feels like we can't sometimes. But that's the thing. We should be able to talk about it amongst each other because every provider has felt this way before. Every provider has felt nervous before. Everyone has felt before like, oh, I've only ever done CEs of this. And guess what? We still go out, we do it, and we find a way to work through it. And here's how you're going to work through it. There was like this interview with Ilona Maher. If you guys don't know her, she's like the American Olympian rugby player. She was like second on Dancing with the Stars. She's kind of iconic. And there was an interview that I watched where I was like, wow, it like just totally changed the way that I thought about confidence and imposter syndrome. So the interviewer asked her, like, how do you handle imposter syndrome? And she just looked at the woman and was like, I don't have that. And then the interviewer was like, what do you mean you don't have imposter syndrome? And Alona Mar was like, I simply don't have that. I feel like I deserve what I've gotten. And I feel like I've worked very hard. And it's okay to be proud of what you've done. It's okay to believe that you deserve something because you put in the work for it. I just thought that was really interesting because I was like, huh, imagine waking up and feeling like that because like it couldn't be me. I feel like I struggle so much with imposter syndrome. I just thought that interview with Ilona Mar was kind of life changing because I was like, wow, life must be so great for her. And like we could all adopt that mentality. So, anyways, first of all, I want you to have that like kind of mentality and that type of mantra in your head when you wake up in the morning is I worked hard. I deserve everything that I'm going to get today. And it's just bottom line, if you've worked hard to get somewhere, then you deserve to feel proud and you deserve to do well. That's really what it is. Oh, one more thing that I want to acknowledge that I don't think we acknowledge enough of is a lot of times when we step into rooms, it's easy to feel intimidated. But chances are, out of everyone in the room that's trying to help this person, you're probably still the most qualified. You've probably gone through the most schooling, taken the most CEs. Even if you're not the most educated on whatever, just know you still received more training than the patient, right? And so you have to remind yourself like you are qualified to help this person. Otherwise, you wouldn't even be standing in this room already. So all of that aside, let's just say you still do feel that kind of anxiousness, that kind of like anxiety to do a new procedure. The thing that I want to remind you, and something I always try to remind myself, is that you just really have to separate your feelings from the facts. So what I mean by that is just because you might feel scared or anxious, that doesn't mean that you're going to do bad. That doesn't mean you're a bad provider. And that doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. It's simply just a new experience that causes you to have that feeling. And the only way to have yourself not feel that feeling and have it not be new is to do it. So, okay, one thing that I think is really helpful whenever you're starting a new procedure, I think the important thing is identifying where your true concern is. Like, what is your worst fear of what could happen? Because I think that we all kind of have different ideas of what's our worst fear. And once you identify what that worst fear is, you can kind of work backwards to avoid that. So, for example, I, for a while, actually felt very anxious doing like anterior crown cases where you're doing like more than like two of the front teeth. Just because, well, one, I just felt so much pressure. I'm like, oh my God, this is someone's smile. Like, I don't want to mess it up. And then I did some reflection and I was thinking about it. And what I really noticed I was worried about was actually how the temporary crowns they went home with turned out. Because like I realized, oh, I'm not nervous to do the procedure. I know how to do a crown prep on these front teeth. I know how to do a good impression. I know how to like X, Y, and Z. What I was worried about and what I guess like seemed more foreign is creating like really, really aesthetic beautiful temporary crowns. So once I identified that weakness, I was able to like articulate like, oh, can we order a bunch new like shades for temporaries or like different shades of flowable so that way I know that no matter what I make that like the temporary crown can turn out okay. Like, do you see how like once I figured out what was really bothering me about the whole procedure, I was able to work backwards and make sure I was prepared for that so that it was no longer really like as much of a concern. And I think that's the thing about doing new procedures for like the first couple of times is it almost feels like everything feels so unknown and feels so scary. So you just kind of have to like process of elimination, figure out like, is there a specific step where you have a worse fear? Okay, number two, I think a really important thing is case selection because you want to make sure that you're choosing good standard cases. You want to make sure you're like set up right from the start and that you're not like that it was doomed from the start, you know? I think also what makes it tough is that in the beginning, case selection might be difficult because you don't really know what's a straight shot, what's an easy thing to do versus what's a difficult thing to do. Everything just seems kind of scary. So the best way to kind of help with this is actually reviewing with like peers and mentors different cases, and that way they can help you tweak like what's a good case to select. Because that's honestly everything is making sure like you're in a scope or doing a procedure that you're comfortable with, that it's not something funky that you've never seen before. It's not something tricky that even the most experienced person would find tricky. You don't want to start off with cases like that. I think another thing, and all of these steps are actually various ways of taking the pressure off of yourself. Another big part is making sure that you explain to the patient beforehand the possible risks and outcomes. Once you talk about like, hey, these are some of the risks, this might happen, this might even happen too. Once they accept and they're like, okay, I accept like these risks, I know that this can happen, you're free to go ahead. Like it's okay. It's obviously not encouraged for complications to happen, but if it does happen, which is inevitable and is just part of practicing, you won't feel like you're the one that caused it. You won't feel like it was a surprise. Like everybody's kind of on the same page, and just the least amount of surprises and most amount of preparation, the better. Another thing that I think can help, remember how I said like the least amount of surprises, the better? One thing that's really important is you have to like prepare your assistant also beforehand. Share some of your concerns with them. Like, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Share like ways that they can help you because they really do want to help you. So say like, okay, it's really important to me if tomorrow during this case, if you can make sure like by the time they're in the room that like this happens, or if you can tell your patient or tell your assistant, hey, this patient's really nervous. Like Alex and I and my assistants always love to kind of debrief before. I'm like, hey, like they mentioned this. So if you can like maybe, work in a certain way, work together, that way you really feel like someone else has your back and you have their back, and just teamwork makes it so much easier. That's just a really important thing is I think sometimes as providers, we're bad at articulating how we're feeling with the team. And so we just internalize it. So then they're kind of like, why are they like being snippy or freaking out or whatever? The sooner you can share how you're feeling with your assistant, the better that they can help you. And then you can really, like Alex and I even have like code words that we share with each other for like worst case scenario and things like that. So you can establish, like, you'll feel so much more prepared once you let your assistant know what you're thinking. Bottom line, you don't have to go through this alone. I think it's also really important that you get the front desk on board too, because when it comes to expensive procedures or like anything like that, you want to make sure from the front to the back that everything is seamless. Everybody's on the same page. And that way there's just no surprises. Surprises are like the last thing that you need when you're stressed out about like a new procedure. One thing that I want to share, I do have like some affirmations that really help me whenever I have a stressful day ahead, I have a big case or something that I'm feeling kind of nervous about. Some affirmations are, one, I always remind myself like this time tomorrow I'll be done. Like I love thinking about, I guess, my day in increments like that. Like this time tomorrow I'll be done. Only 4 more hours till I'm done. It's just a nice reminder that like when I leave today, like life will move on. Like it's not the end of the world. No one's dying. I'm not going to die if something doesn't work out right. I'm going to go home. I'm still going to take a hot shower. I'm still going to eat dinner with Jimmy. Like life is still going to be okay. There was life before and there's going to be life after, right? So that's what you need to tell yourself is like, okay, like no matter what happens after this, I'm still going to walk out of here, be my same old self, and the world is going to keep spinning, right? I also have to mention, and I know everyone says this, it might not even help you in the moment, but it eventually did help me, is knowing that like literally no practitioner out there can say that they've never made a mistake or never felt stressed or anxious or bad about something. Feeling stressed, anxious, guilty, shameful, whatever, all of these negative emotions is not any indication of how good of a provider you are. So like, I think part of that imposter syndrome is like, oh my gosh, I feel so nervous. That must mean I'm not as prepared as someone else, or I'm not as strong as someone else, or I'm not as good as someone else. Like I said in the beginning, feelings are literally just feelings. Just let them pass through, and then you don't have to take too much stock in it. Like, just move through the emotions rather than harping on what the emotions mean or whatever, because they really don't mean anything. I feel nervous all the time. I feel anxious sometimes when I'm like, oh my gosh, when do I feel anxious? Well, I'm kind of always anxious whenever I'm in like the airport line, whenever we have to like take off our shoes and like take out our equipment, because I feel like every airport is so different. Like some airports, I'm like, do I take out my laptop? Other airports I've been to, like you don't even have to take out anything. I would just like a little bit of congruency. That would be great. But yeah, that was just like a little side tangent. Like there's so many things that you feel nervous about that are literally so inconsequential. That's an example. So don't let this be another inconsequential thing that you feel nervous about. Okay. Okay, I don't know if this is gonna help you, but this kind of helped me a little bit. I hope this helps. And if it doesn't, you didn't learn this from me. But I feel like typically your first few times of doing a procedure, they actually go really well. And that's because the first few times you do something, you probably did everything I said above. You probably made sure it was a good case to do. You reviewed it with your peers tirelessly. You went over every possible complication. You avoided every little thing. Usually the first few ones are good, right? What happens is inevitably you put in enough reps, and that's when complications, surprising things come up. It's just the normal progression of like growing. It's like just what happens when you get more experience and start to challenge yourself and do more cases. And the thing is, like, there's usually a fix for everything. Like, it's half the time when things don't work out, it was never going to work out anyway. So, for example, like if you're doing like a big filling and then you pulp out or something, chances are by the time you've pulped out, like anything would have caused that to pulp out because the cavity is so big. It's not because of you, right? Just don't feel so much pressure around it because you're still going to leave the patient better off. You still tried your best. They're still better off for having seen you because at the end of the day, you do have more of a professional experience than someone who doesn't, right? So you're still leaving them better off, but like don't feel so much pressure. If something happens, like chances are half the time like it was going to happen anyways. I don't know if that makes you feel any better, this whole like, oh, usually the bad thing doesn't happen the first time you do it. But like seriously, usually the first time you do something, like you have multiple eyes on you, you have a lot of help, like it's a big thing. It's when you do more and more. To be experienced is to know things like complications and failures and all those things that you're worried about. But I would say that should help you also ease your nerves because in the beginning, you're probably going to choose the good cases. You're going to have enough preparation. Oh, my leg is falling asleep. The last two things I want to talk about, these are little tricks I've talked about in the past for dealing with like big days, board exams, big cases, nerves. Two things. One, it's called the Superman pose. If you haven't heard of it already, you can look it up. It's basically this like scientifically proven pose that will help boost your confidence. I swear, this is the only way that I did well on my DAT exam because I was like shaking like a leaf. I owe everything, my entire dental career, to this pose. Maybe that's why I have imposter syndrome, is because I owe everything to that. But okay, what you do for the Superman pose, I like to do it in the mirror too because I can see myself. But you take a deep breath in, you literally like lift your head up, and then you extend your arms back as if your arms are like a cape. Like just Superman it out. Let your arms go behind you. It's like a cape, it's flapping in the wind. You're invincible. You're Superwoman, actually, I should say. Do that a couple times, and scientists have found that literally by like doing that pose, it helps you feel more confident by getting the blood moving. Another thing is something called the alter ego effect, which I love. I feel like, so for example, Beyonce has used her alter ego, Eminem has used his alter ego. Who else? I want to say Drake has an alter ego too, although Drake's not the best person to use as an example right now. I'm like, does Kendrick Lamar have an alter ego? Okay, so basically, the alter ego is just you imagine like the dream person that could be achieving what you want to achieve. Say, like, just imagine like someone who you think is so capable, so perfect, so powerful. Imagine them and just channel that. Pretend for a second like you were them. So, for example, Beyonce, she actually gets nervous to go on stage sometimes. So she adopted an alter ego who is Sasha Fierce. And when she goes on stage, she's not Beyonce anymore. She changes immediately and she's Sasha Fierce. So, I mean, you don't have to have a name for your person. I don't think I have one for mine. But mine, for example, she always gets her nails done. So that's kind of a big reason why I always get my nails done, is I feel like no matter what, I have my alter ego with me. Although right now mine are about 3 weeks grown out. So my alter ego's got to step on it and get these redone. But you know what I mean? Like there are little ways to kind of signal to yourself, like, okay, just kind of play a little pretend, play a little like acting, and just turn it on when you have to. Some things that help you kind of turn on your alter ego, I found, is music. I really love listening to like Nicki Minaj when I'm like getting ready. I guess my alter ego loves Nicki Minaj. Um, like I said, fragrance too. Fragrance is really good. I have a perfume that I love to put on for like big days and stuff like that. Putting on an outfit that you're really comfortable or confident in, like your scrubs, anything like that that can help you channel like not even I hesitate to say your best self because at the end of the day it's almost not even like you're trying to be you're trying to be someone else and just kind of like play pretend. But yeah, give the Superman pose and the alter ego effect a try. I hope this really helps out. And like, bottom line, I just want you to know, like, it is so normal to feel that way. I feel like I understand why it's weird to admit that you feel this way as a provider. You don't want your patients to think that you're scared. You want to seem confident to your patients. But I'm just letting you know it is so normal to feel this way. We feel this way all the time. We all have big cases. Even experienced dentists that I work with, they all have cases where they see coming in and they kind of feel a little bit of like, oh, I got to prepare for it, right? So if even experienced people feel that way, then you shouldn't feel like you are less than just for feeling this way too. So, bottom line, all you got to do is put in the work, prepare, communicate well with your team, communicate well with the patient. If you do those three things, prepare, communicate with your team, and prepare with your patient, then you're going to be fine. You have nothing to worry about. And the only way out is through. I always tell myself that. So, the only way out is through and to do it. And then before you know it, the more you do it, the less scary and new it's going to be, and the more you're going to conquer. Okay. So, anyways, now let's go on to we have two small talk news stories of the week. So, my first small talk news story, this is so crazy. I shared this with a patient today. We love talking about it. Um, Wait, actually, can I just say, let me just like sit on my little soapbox for a second. My patient today said like he hates going to the dentist, but said he loved coming in today and working with Alex and I because well, one, he said he loved when we were like singing and having fun. He was like, you guys work so well together. But I think a big part of it is because we made some really good small talk with him today. So let me just say it can totally change the vibe of an appointment. So, the small talk news story of the week. There is a historical all woman space flight going on right now with Katy Perry, Gail King, and Jeff Bezos' fiance, Lauren Sanchez. So, Jeff Bezos, like the founder of Amazon, he actually founded a space tech company called Blue Origin in 2000. It operates two rockets. Okay, there's one called the New Shepard, which is named after Alan Shepard, who was the first American to go into space. And then there's another one called the New Glenn. I don't really know too much about it. We're focusing on the New Shepard for this story. So, this company was kind of low key for like 21 years, but then in 2021, the New Shepard completed its first crewed mission with Bezos actually himself on board. And so ever since then, it's been just sending up like various celebrities. So like William Shatner, Michael Strahan. To be completely honest, I don't know too much about them. It wasn't any famous girlies that I know of, at least. It's just really interesting because a couple months ago, Jimmy and I like reported on we reported on this news story about how they're brewing sake in space, and the whole story was kind of focused around how more and more of human life is trying to kind of like it's about like colonizing space almost. Like I feel like rich people are starting to they must know something we don't because I feel like the rich people are starting to like gravitate and move more towards space and us normies are going to be left on the ground, I guess. But I mean, for the time being, I don't care because the thought of going to space scares me, even if it's only for 11 minutes, which is what this flight route is. So yeah, anyways, this flight is making history because it's the first all-woman space flight crew. It's going to soar past something called the Kármán line, which is an international like boundary of space. So that way they can view Earth and they can experience a couple minutes of weightlessness, and then they're gonna come back to Earth. So yeah, I just thought that was ridiculous. I also wonder like how they chose these women. Okay, in my mind, this is like so crazy, and I know this isn't gonna happen, but this could be like if Jeff Bezos was feeling some kind of way about Lauren Sanchez in like a mystery murder horror movie, this would be how he like got rid of her basically. Like I could just imagine him like evilly like sending her up into space. Oh my gosh, this would be such a good movie. And then Katy Perry and Gail King have to work together to get them back onto Earth. That'd be such a good movie. Anyways, someone do something with those thoughts. Okay, so that's small talk story number one. Now on to small talk story number two. So there is a company called Loyal. It's a biotech startup that creates drugs for dogs. They've actually developed an anti-aging pill for dogs. So it's a beef flavored pill for dogs 10 years or older that weigh at least 14 pounds, and it helps them with metabolic health. So this company basically determined that as dogs age, their metabolic health goes down. I mean, like, I feel like in all living animals it goes down, and I wonder how they chose metabolic health. I feel like I have too many questions. But anyways, by doing this, by helping their metabolic health, they hope to extend their lifespan and shorten the rate of aging. So basically, last week, this company, Loyal, announced that the FDA certified its medication as having a reasonable expectation of efficacy, but now it still has to be approved to be safe and manufactured. Long term, I think the company said on its website that it's planning on having FDA approval by the end of 2025. So this pill has limitations. The company knows it could give a minimum of 1 extra year of healthy life. So, like, at the very least, if the drug like didn't work great with your dog, it could at minimum extend the life by 1 year. This also, I have to know, isn't the only company that's working on extending the lifespan of dogs. There's also something called the Dog Aging Project, and it's looking at how a drug called rapamycin. It's actually a drug that's used, as you guys probably know, it's a drug that's used in human organ transplants to prevent organ rejection. They're trying to see if this could extend a dog's lifespan by an extra 3 years by improving heart and cognitive functions. So one thing to note is that scientists believe that if these medications are successful with dogs, they could also be applied to humans as well and help with our lifespans. Although I kind of feel like if it was going to work in humans, we already would have noticed it with the rapamycin because that's already a drug that people are using. But I don't know. I just thought this was really interesting. And it kind of begs the question, like, if you could make your dog live longer, would you? I mean, like, I feel like we would all want our dogs to live longer. But what this doesn't show us is, like, are they living longer, but, like, in pain? Are they living longer and, like, actually living good lives, like, able to run and play in whatever the way that they want? Or is it kind of like a cruel way of just keeping them alive longer? I don't know. I just find like the pet industry so fascinating because like the more the society progresses, the more that we just treat dogs like humans. Like last year, I reported on how there's like literally, and I saw another report. There are now like dog airlines that are coming out for like luxury dog flying experiences. Okay, wait. I originally wasn't going to make this a small talk news story, but Jimmy's making me make this a small talk news story because he's so personally victimized by this story. Kingda Ka, North America's tallest roller coaster, has been demolished. So, yeah, this is from Six Flags in New Jersey. They recently demolished Kingda Ka. Wait, I'm sorry, it's not North America. It's actually the world's tallest roller coaster, Kingda Ka. They did this like massive explosion to explode the ride. I guess that's the only way to take down a roller coaster now that you think about it. But they're replacing this roller coaster, not to fret, but they're going to replace the King Ka with a new ride called the Flash, Vertical Velocity, and it's going to be North America's first super boomerang coaster, and only the second of its kind in the entire world. So that's kind of exciting. Personally, I'm not a roller coaster junkie. I'm more of a like stand on the ground and hold all of your bags and watch you guys go over and try to take a photo of you as you go over kind of girl. But in case you like roller coasters, there's some sad, bittersweet, but maybe exciting news for you that you can share with patients. Yeah, can't relate, but RIP King Ka. I do remember when it first came out learning that it was like the biggest roller coaster in the world, and that was exciting. Anyways, those were our two small talk news stories of the week. I hope you share them with someone, and I can say that this was approved. These stories were approved by my patients today. They love them. Share them with someone and see what awesome conversations you guys can have. Anyways, that was the episode of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you like what you heard, please leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And other than that, I will see you guys next week. Bye!